This is a totally new direction for me. And I realized that I'm inspired by people who make me ask why. And I have 5 cases in point here just from last year of people that's made me ask why. I think if I'm going the right direction here. Oh, okay, so last year I actually kind of got introduced to Ruth Stout, which I don't think she's actually living anymore, but her concept is she's called the mother of no-till gardening. She's not from Kansas. A lot of people who inspire me are from Kansas, but she's a farmer. And here she is, this 80 or 90-year-old lady. I'm not sure how old she was at the point when somebody filmed her in her garden talking about her gardening system. And she's tottering around the garden with this cane and asking these preposterous questions that you don't ask when you're a gardener. Like, why do I have to plow my garden? Why do I have to plant things in rows? Why does gardening have to be hard work? And she made me think. And I thought, how many other agricultural practices are out there that I don't even know are optional? Who knew that planting in rows was optional, right? All sorts of agricultural things are probably optional that I don't know about. And then last year at convention here, Jim Richardson was here and presented, had an amazing photo presentation on agricultural past and present around the world. And Richardson didn't actually ask a lot of questions, but he didn't have to because his pictures did it for him. And his pictures basically shouted, why can't 5-hectare farmers feed 9 billion people? That's what I got out of it. He was showing illustrations that made me think, why do we disregard these methods, historical methods of agriculture that have sustained humanity for thousands of years? And then there's Woody Tash that is, oh, whoa, there we go. Am I still 2?
You're right.
Okay, great. Okay, so then there's Woody Tash. Jim's a Kansan, right? Woody Tash is not. He's not even a farmer. He's an investment guy. I'm in the financial world way above my head, right? But he's asking some questions that's breaking the investing world's paradigms. He's asking, why don't we slow money down and bring it back down to earth? These are the wrong questions to be asking in investment circles, right? Why don't we invest as if food, farms, and fertility matter? He started a movement called Slow Money that's strictly doing that, trying to slow money down. And so then I was asking, why do we have to have fast money? Why isn't the farmer seen as an important part of the economy? And then there's another Kansan. I keep counting back Kansans here. He used to be the managing, Brian Welch used to be the managing editor of Mother Earth News. And he left that to form his own private business, actually, here this last year, called Be the Change, which advocates for small, not necessarily small, I guess, which advocates for businesses. And he asked the question, why can't businesses be a force for humanity still? Gotta think about that. Why do we always rely on nonprofits to do all the good in the world? And for that matter, why is profit a dirty word? And another Kansan, back to our theme this year, Marcy Pinner, she was a presenter here 2 years ago, I believe, at convention. See where I'm drawing some of my inspiration down? Another Kansan, and she's asking some very basic questions too. Why can't rural communities be viable options for young people? And that question, I think, distilled is, why can't, usually young people don't stay in rural communities because they feel limited. So why can't we change the world from rural towns in Kansas, right? So all these whys have been percolating the last year, right? And I realized that our family has a why culture. And that's why simply working with my family on our farm is inspiring. And we keep asking why. And so I got to thinking about why, as related to my family and my farm and our experiences there. And I realized that every time that we dared to ask why, it always resulted in something that really impacted our farm and our family and our community for the better. So here's 10 instances of a few times when we asked why. The first being, we asked, why can't small farmers exist on small acreages? Why do we have to farm big? We began farming in 2001 with a ludicrous combination of 40-year-old parents, 6 children, no farming experience to speak of, and only 160 acres of land, which might sound like a lot if you're in Massachusetts, but you guys know that's not considered much in Kansas, right? And we didn't own the land either. So, but we asked, why not? And we just jumped in there and started doing it, and 15 years later, 16, we've not only survived on those small acreage, we still only own 160 acres of land, but it's thrived and is now on its way to supporting not just our one original family, but each of us 6 children's families as we grow. And the second question is, we said, why can't we dress chickens and have fun, right? So we wanted to dress chickens. And people said, no, 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 this is a bad dream. It's a money sinkhole. You do not want to do this. You're disillusioned. Do not do this. And we're like, well, actually, yeah, I think we could dress chickens, and I think we could, have fun. It's probably not that bad. And they're like, oh, yes, it is that bad. Get that idea out of your head. So we went ahead and dressed chickens. And guess what? I think that we have I don't think there's anybody else in America that has more fun dressing 50,000 birds than we do. And then we asked, why can't small towns have farmers markets? Why does it have to be farmers markets have to be, supposedly, in large cities that are removed from food access. They don't have neighboring farmers. And plus, people in small towns aren't going to be paying the high prices in farmers markets. People in small towns aren't interested in local food. Bad idea, bad fit, right? So we had 2 18-year-olds and 1 newbie Kansan start a market in the middle of the year in a vacated town square. That was 7 years ago. And guess what? We're here in America, in the middle of agricultural land, and people can't access food because we haven't asked why can't we have local food in our agricultural communities. And then we asked the question, okay, so there's this whole financing thing with farms, right? And the whole money question. And you go to a bank and they say, what do you have for collateral? And he said, why can't the farmer be the collateral, right? I mean, what's worth more? My work ethic and my inspiration and my brains and ideas, or a beef cow, right? But they all said the beef cow. And, so finally, like 15, it was really, really gratifying. We kept asking that question. We were really satisfied with the beef cow, especially since they didn't think we had enough beef cows. But finally, 15 years later, last year, we finally got recognized for some of the true collateral on our farm. It was really amazing to actually get a loan based solely on farmer collateral, which happened last year with some slow money events. And then we asked, these aren't necessarily in the right order, but why can't we have more than just eggs in our basket? Why do we have to do one thing and do it well? What if our farm is actually healthier having 10 different species of animals on there? And what if I'm actually more stable having 20 different enterprises rather than just one? And what if we even find ways to value add intangibles, which is what we have here with our egg slips. We have our eggs, and then we value add it with an intangible news update from the farm. And so we did. We have the 20 different farm enterprises that all worked together, and our farmers were stronger for it. And then we asked something that's like a really basic question again. Why can't I feed my grains that I grow in my fields to my animals? It's like, well, because there's no infrastructure. There's no mills. There's no storage. There's no this and there and that. It's like, so get it, right? It's like, well, that takes money. And we're like, well, why does money have to be getting in the road all the time, right? So, anyways, we kept asking why. And 10 years later, we finally had everything lined up where we had money and infrastructure and grains and animals all lined up. And so now, as of a year ago, we finally can feed our grains to our animals instead of raising the grains, raising the animals, selling the grains, buying the feed. And furthermore, we can also provide our neighbors with local grains as well from their crops or from their neighbors' crops. Because we thought it was preposterous that we're in an agricultural economy and we ship in all of our grains to feed our animals from out of state. You try to get Kansas grown grains for your backyard chickens or something like that. And then we asked another dumb question. Why can't I borrow money from my friends? Well, you don't even go there, right? You're just asking to lose a lot of friends or something. Probably all your family, too. But we got to thinking, I need a lender I can trust. They need an investment they can understand. And back to what Woody Cash was saying, if we vote with our food dollars, right, what do we do with the rest of our money? Do they not vote too? So that means that everybody with money is an investor, not necessarily just rich people. And that means that my friends and my family are potential investors. Because what are they doing with their money? They might not be having a lot of it, but everybody's got it. You have to have money just to survive, I guess. And then the challenge, if we're going to ask ourselves this question, then you have the follow-up one is, do I have the courage to believe in my farm enough that I can offer it as an investment for my friends and for my family? And that's a hard question because farmers face a lot of risks, and you don't really want to put yourself out there. You sure don't want to risk relationships, but until this last year, we never knew that borrowing money and having lenders could actually be fun. That's definitely changed our world. And then a more serious question is, we had to ask ourselves this exactly a year ago today. We said, why can't I? Why do I have to be afraid of failure? So we were faced a year ago with, my brother and I were standing outside courthouse, and we had to ask ourselves this: what if we fail? what if we lose our farm over everything? We're talking about doubling our mortgage. We walked away from that courthouse with 1.5 weeks to come up with hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we said about that, worst case scenario, what's going to happen? We're probably just going to lose a lot of pride. And we thought, in that respect, failure didn't look too terrible after all. And so we decided if the worst thing we had to be worried about was failing, that maybe wasn't too bad of a thing anyways. So we did. We said, we will do this thing and we will not be afraid of failure. And then there's kind of the theme of our farm ever since it began is we've always asked, why can't we expect miracles? As farmers every day, we see miracles. And sometimes we get a little jaded. We see, the germination and the sprouting and growing of seeds and plants. We see the birth of a calf. And we just see those miracles every day. But we're also, as farmers, we're also very vulnerable in the fact that every day we deal with elements beyond our control. The weather and the markets, and it's all bigger than we are. And pretty soon we're all going to find ourselves between a rock and a hard place. And often we find ourselves there. And the only thing left to do is to just pray really hard for a miracle, right? And we've found out that they come. And so therefore, we all know that the farming takes a lot of faith, but my word, it takes a lot of miracles too. And our family has, in everything we do, we have been willing to step out and take that risk and just say, well, it's probably going to take a miracle to save us now. And it does. It keeps coming up. So, what else is a miracle? We got to think about this. And that's the miracle of working together. Because that doesn't just happen naturally. You kind of have to work at it, and it takes a lot of hard work and the hand of God. And even then, sometimes it doesn't quite work out. But I know this because I work with my family every day. And I've not really thought about that. But also, I realized how much of a part that sharing, that miracle of sharing has played a part in our farm and the direction that we go. And I identified several different instances that has been key in that. Being willing, because we don't have there's a lady, an author, Judy Wicks, that's kind of said it best. And she said, you do not have a sustainable business is never an island unto itself. You're not going to have a sustainable farm with one farmer. You're not going, and it's truly sustainable. You don't have healthy rural communities that are built by one farmer, by one mayor, or by one businessman. It all takes everybody working together. So I realized that played out even in our farm. In our chicken dressing facility, Anco, when we started that, we were USDA inspected, and why did, this terrible job of dressing chickens, why would we want to dress our neighbors' chickens? We had enough to do with our own. Why would we really want to, we have all this expensive infrastructure that we put into our farm so we could dress our chickens. Why were our neighbors didn't put in that expensive infrastructure? Why should we, even dress their chickens? But we needed to, because they were our neighbors, and they're also they're not our competitors, and they're part of our risk management, actually. Back with our basic farming operations, when we started farming, no equipment. And so we relied on farmers who shared with us their equipment that we dug out of fence rows and fixed up and everything. And now that we have our own equipment, that plays through still. And at harvest time, my brothers have custom harvesting services, and during the crazy harvest time, they'll share their time and go and help everybody else get their crops out of the field. And with the butcher block, our beef processing facility that we got a year ago today, we had the choice of, do we go USDA inspected with that, or it could be entirely profitable just being custom and retail exempt. We wouldn't even have to mess with those inspectors, right? But we did, because here we are, sitting on this resource, and I want to be able to say hi to my neighbors when I walk down the street. I don't want to be greedily sitting on this resource that they desperately need. So, yes, we'll go through all the inspectors just so we can be USDA inspected, so we can share it with our neighbors. Back again with the feed mill. That's the same basic question. We could have a pretty good competitive advantage. Everyone out there is wanting local grains. They want their animals fed local grains. They want the non-GMO, right? And nobody else has this around. So why are we sharing our competitive advantage? And, getting rid of it. And why even did I come here today, right? It's time away from the farm. Why are we sharing our experiences, our hard lessons learned with other people and not, keeping them for competitive advantage? But it goes back to a sustainable business is not an island unto itself. We wouldn't be here if we didn't share. So I learned a lot about sharing when I went to Germany this summer for the International Workshop for Rural Youth. There were 197 students from 63 different countries. This is my first time outside the United States, so to talk about immersion, right? And I wasn't really good with any other language. Fortunately, most of them could speak English. But for 2 weeks, we learned together. And so I learned how big the world really was. And we also learned how big the world's problems really are. We had what we called a World Cafe in a half an hour. It was pretty intense. Half an hour, we distilled our challenges from around the world, broke out into 4 categories of environmental, food security, education, and community development. And this is what we found. It was pretty amazing seeing all the world things. I might have to, I'm not sure if I can remember all this. So the challenges for rural development, so you have this rural exodus problem in some of the parts of the world. And how do they stop that? We found out that's increasing job opportunities, improving the rural lifestyle, improving the access to information and technology, finding ways to motivate for education, coping with climate change, the promotion of high-value agriculture, promotion of policy and government that fosters rather than hinders the farmer and small business growth. That's a lot. I don't have time, unfortunately, to really get into the details of all this over lunch. That would be a whole nother session. Anyways, think about that. Ooh, that sure got dark. Then environment, right? Another huge topic around the world. So how do they cope with climate change and deforestation and pollution, right? So it's going to take waste reduction, waste management, green technology for industry, because a lot of the pollution comes from industrial applications, and useful items, actually, from waste recycling instead of just waste treatment. And then you'll have to use renewable energy to help combat deforestation. And a case in the Philippines, they used one-day mass action events to help draw attention to creeping problems like pollution, right? And then education. So there's the whole access and affordability thing, which a lot of times is only compounded by then lack of practical application of what they're learning, or apprenticeship. And so they found some of the biggest ways to combat that was higher motivation of the student. Critical also was peer support, training the trainers, and finding innovative role models. Then on food security, so we have this challenge of lack of farmer education and infrastructure. And we have the youth migration issues, right? And then we have foodways and regulations and land access. And to combat all of that, we're going to need to encourage sustainability mindsets and community support that also promotes risk management and diversity with supportive regulations. That'll take some creative things like machine co-oping, CSAs, climate smart agriculture, natural fertilizers, organic farming methods, with a restriction of cheap imports and development of early warning systems. All right, so I went through that really fast, and that was probably a little boring or a little heavy for lunch, but so that's all really interesting, right? That's just kind of the world's problems distilled into that. But that's really, we don't have those kind of issues here. We don't have the pollution in the Philippines. We don't have the AIDS in Kenya. We don't have the terrorists that are in Tunisia, or the floods in Bangladesh, or the immigration crisis in Germany, right? Well, we'll have to come back to that. No doubt about it. So we live in Kansas, right? Privileged Americans in the heart of the breadbasket. We don't have to worry about erosion or drought or water shortages or obesity or rural exodus or any of those challenges that they have across the world, right? So that was kind of interesting. You all hear, we're all the same, blah, 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 But it's true, and it takes an incident like this to really drive it home. Wow, countries that have no money, no economies, are really not that much different than what we're dealing with here in the heartland of America. So, very nice. What are we going to do with it? Well, one thing that really struck home with us in the class, everyone, we had these 4 topics, right? Well, the more we digested what we learned, we have environment, education, and community development. And really, when you boiled it down, they all boiled down into food security. We might as well just have one topic and call it food security, because when you're talking about food security, you're talking about community development and environment and education. And when you talk about education, you're talking about environment and community development, food security, and blah, blah. But the heart of the matter is food security. So what are we going to do about that? Well, I had these 5 whys. It's been incubating for the year, rolling around in my head, and I knew it meant something. Then I had this classmate from South Korea that was doing some really awesome things with intensive agriculture, growing like 5 crops in 1 square foot, that kind of thing. And they're actually doing that kind of thing all over the world, which I thought was pretty cool. But she said, trouble in South Korea is we're growing all this great food with less space, and it's better food and healthier for you, but we can't get people to eat it. People in South Korea will not buy organic tomatoes. They do not like the taste of them. They said, ooh, we don't like the taste of organic tomatoes. So, great. Here we're trying to solve food security. She's doing a great thing with producing more with less land and more nutrient-dense food and everything, and they're not eating it, right? Well, what's that mean? And I spent a couple days over the conference resisting this idea that was knocking at the back of my head. It's consumer education. That's a boring answer, right? You have all these world problems that all distill down into food security, and then you come back to consumer education. That sounds like something totally unrelated, right? But it's not necessarily what we think of as consumer education. So, we have, in order to solve food security, we're going to have to educate the consumers. So probably that means we're going to have to do like a new nonprofit, probably. We can do it, call it WORKS. We have Working Eaters Revitalizing Kansas and educate them that way. But it's not just really a Kansas problem, right? It's nationwide. So really, this should be a USDA function. So if it goes national, then we should call it NICE, for the National Institute for Consumer Education. Maybe there's one already, I don't know. This sounds like too good of an acronym to waste all these years. Or we could do something grassroots, right? And I really resisted this idea. I kept boiling around and I kept trying to think of something else because I knew what grassroots meant, right? It meant something so plain, so ordinary. It meant something that I was going to have to do. It means that I'm going to have to be responsible. I'm going to have to take personal responsibility for this consumer education. And that's even a bad application for it, because when we think of consumer education, we think of consumer exposure, right? We think of telling them what boneless chicken really is, or where your fish sticks really come from. But that's not consumer education. And that's consumer information, probably. And yeah, that needs to be done. That's a very important work. But that's not what we're talking about here. We need the kind of consumer education that allows them to get their hands dirty, to understand where their food comes from. That's not really education, that's maybe engaging consumers. And because we have to let them connect with their food, because once they connect with their food and understand where it comes from, then we've empowered them. And guess what empowered consumers do? They make better food choices, which allows the farmer to make better farming choices, which results in better choices for the environment, for his farm, for the family, for the economy, for the world. Okay, so we need to engage consumers. And who's going to do that? We are. Each of us. And it's not anything complicated. It's something simple. Anything that gets their hands dirty. It might be putting the chicken in their backyard. It might be letting them come out and pick berries and get their hands stained. I'm not talking tourism. It might be inviting them for a work day. And it might be involving athletes in farm work. But really the heart of the matter is, it's being honest about the grit and glory of farming. It's going to, this is a hard thing to get over in your head, but it is an easy action. It doesn't require any complicated program. It doesn't even require any specific day out of, but it is going to require us to be more personally responsible. And this is scary. There's asking us farmers who already work from dawn to dusk to do more. But really, we've done more in the line of production, right? But we're leaving behind our whole purpose for being, and that's the people who eat it, which is, of course, every one of us as well in our family. But we've gotten lazy. We've said, oh, well, education is somebody's job, and everyone else says, well, education is the farmer's job, and they say, oh, it's the teacher's job, or we pass that education buck around, and we just want to produce, and they just want to teach, and they just want to govern, and other people just want to go to work and be done with it, right? So this sounds hard. You're going to have to probably go out on it. Be a little vulnerable. These people probably look in your dumpsters. They do. And You might even feel like you're going over the edge sometimes, right? But this is what it boils down to. We already know that food equals security. Food equals economic security, and environmental security, and social security, and political security. It's at the heart of it. And who's in charge of producing that food that is the security? It's us. So it's going to take every one of us. Because I don't want this to end with, I have a dream, right? That's it's good to dream, but vision without action is only dreaming. So we need vision with action, because it can change the world. And this is a simple concept. But if every one of us stands up and takes personal responsibility, then the change that begins with us, when we step forward and take that commitment, then these small steps of ours are still giant leaps for mankind. And, all together, we can do it.
About the water, though. You just like really pissing off hotel staff? I've been rambling up here for 15 years, and I never seen a better presentation as an example showing why farm organizations like Farmers Union were created, and why it's so important to be along and to work with your fellow man and your fellow farmer. So thank you, Rosanna. That was great.